All right, so today, and this is going to be interesting, this is going to be fun. Today we're going to speak and hopefully we'll continue the conversation at Kiddush as well, about an important topic. This is going to be a political topic. It's the World Zionist Congress elections. Voting has been open for about a month now. Hopefully you all have already voted. And if you have not yet voted, we have postcards and bookmarks around the sanctuary and in our hallway providing instruction on how to vote. Now, we are endorsing a particular slate. Which is Merkaz, Slate 17, as the issues in the World Zionist Congress are connected with and inseparable from who we are as Jews belonging to a Masorti conservative community. Now, we recognize, and it's looking around the faces who are here in person, and I'm sure the faces who are also joining us virtually, I recognize, and we all do, that this is a politically diverse community. No matter how you vote, either in the World Zionist Congress or in any other place that you're voting, no matter how you vote, you're welcome here and you're embraced here. And especially when it comes to the World Zionist Congress right now, we ask and we implore you to vote. Please get all your friends and family who are eligible to vote. There are only a couple of weeks left. So we're going to start with some general information. It is reported from framed by the Times of Israel Daily Briefing, which of course every organization and every source of news has its own political slant. So we're going to talk about the more general information first, or information from a more general perspective, and then we're going to speak about the Merkaz perspective specifically a little bit later on. So on Tuesday, February 11th, this was a couple months ago now, the Times of Israel reported on this World Zionist Congress election coming up in their daily briefing podcast. Maybe some of you have heard this podcast episode like I have. Jessica Steinberg is the host, and she interviewed Zev Stubb, who's the diaspora reporter for them, on the topic of the World Zionist Congress. It takes on this topic starting really from the beginning. I'm going to provide some information here, but I encourage you all to go home and listen to this episode to get your own perspective on this information. And so the way they frame it is that what this election is about is what kind of Jew is going to lead the Jewish world and get the money in the budget. And that's so the World Zionist Congress, and they comment, it's interesting because the average American Jew hasn't heard of it, but it's the biggest single opportunity for North American Jews to influence the future of the Jewish people. This is important. This is why we're talking about it today. So what exactly are the World Zionist Congress elections? Well, about every 5 years, there was a little bit of a delay due to October 7th, as we can understand. About every 5 years, the Jewish people worldwide can choose a slate, vote for a slate representing their perspective on Jewish life and how the Jewish world should be run. So you can find within the different slates available, slates that advocate for religious pluralism, Orthodox institutions, a two-state solution, Judea and Samaria. There are all sorts of options available to us. And in the end, as with any parliament, each party gets power according to the number of votes that party receives. So what exactly is the budget for this? Different sources say different things, but it's pretty clear that's between $1 and $2 billion for the Jewish people worldwide. It's a lot of money, and it's more than the money that the Jewish federations of North America raise in a year. So this is a substantial sum, and that's why it's important to vote. So who is in the running? Who can you vote for? Now, this time around, there are a record 22 different parties to choose from, 22 different slates to choose from, up from 13. So this is a substantial increase. And this framing is as phrased by the Times of Israel Daily Briefing. The parties are divided into roughly two camps, Orthodox and not Orthodox. All right, so sidebar here. All right. For this division between Orthodox and not Orthodox is a major split, perhaps the major split in this conversation. Now, I know for us personally, many of us individuals in here, there might not be a divide in our own personal lives between Orthodox and not Orthodox like there is politically in this situation. I know that I and many of us here have not just Orthodox friends and teachers, but Orthodox Jews in our families. We're not disparaging anyone here, not disparaging anyone. And it's true, there are meaningful political differences that it's important to talk about. We know in this community that we can, and we do every day, love and cherish people with opinions that don't match our own. And we at Adat Shalom value this ideological diversity. All right, so End sidebar. Now let's continue. Okay, so we have Orthodox and not Orthodox. So, we might be satisfied with that division or not, but it exists as framed by the Times of Israel Daily Briefing and many other people when it comes to the politics in these elections. So, one of the reasons why people are making such a big deal about this particular election cycle is that the liberal side, the not Orthodox side, basically the Reform movement and the conservative movement, lost considerable territory to the Orthodox side of this conversation, and for the first time became the minority in the World Zionist Congress. Now, the question that Jessica Steinberg and Zev Stubb really asked is this reflective of a shift in North American Jewish culture? The answer is maybe. It depends on your opinion. So why was this shift happening? I think that the Reform and conservative movements feel like, well, we didn't get out the vote. That's why I'm being encouraged by the Masorti movement worldwide to get out the vote, and also why Dr. Yitzhar Hess came to speak to us a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. He made the time for us. It was very impressive. But so another reason why there was a big shift in the last election cycle is that a new ultra-Orthodox party came in and won 1/6 of the seats, which is a big deal. So splitting the parties into two sides, which is, it's hard for me to grapple with this division. But so we've got Orthodox Jewry. It started with one slate in the last cycle. This election cycle, there are 7 slates. And liberal Jewry, we did split from 2 slates to more than 2 slates. It wasn't quite as dramatic of an increase, but also affected. And we can talk more about those details at Kiddush if you want. Now, one of the things that this podcast episode emphasized, and I encourage all of us to really do more research on our own time, is that when it comes to what these parties are and what they stand for, there's more than meets the eye. This is I'll just say, for the purposes of this brief conversation here, that this affects both the liberal side and the Orthodox side. There's when we find out who is funding these parties, we might change our opinions a little bit. So on that note, the note that there's more than meets the eye, the Times of Israel piece was like, all right, and that's the end of our podcast episode. Do your own research. So again, the conversation continues. That's kind of our background to explaining how and why our Dot Shalom community is endorsing a particular slate. That slate is called Merkaz, and it's affiliated with the with the Masorti movement, the conservative movement. And as I was mentioning just a moment ago, we had a speaker here from Merkaz here just before Pesach, after our Thursday morning minyan on April 3rd, 8 o'clock in the morning. It was amazing. Dr. Yitzhar Hess, Vice Chairman of the World Zionist Congress, who I understand we as a community met for the first time over Zoom in the pandemic when he spoke to us for the first time, and we really developed that relationship. So he came here to this bima to ask us to vote and to ask us to vote for Merkaz. His presentation was recorded. It's on our YouTube channel. I encourage us all to watch that presentation after Yom Tov. And I want to share today some of the information that he presented. Something that fills me with pride and love. The first thing he said when he started speaking is how he could feel the love for Israel that was in our sanctuary during our Minyaner Shacharit service. And that moved me so much that he heard some of the prayers that the Masorti movement says in Israel. We say them in English here. They say them in Hebrew there, but they're the same prayers, and he recognized that. So he introduced his presentation by speaking about how we get from October 7th. I think many of us have heard and many of us have felt as we've traveled to Israel since October 7th, is that emotionally and in some ways logistically, Israel is still on October 7th, and how do we get to October 8th? How do we get to the next day? How do we move forward? The most important thing in his view was that we get our 59 hostages who are still held captive back home, and we need to get answers about how October 7th could have happened in the first place. And he said there are 3 things that we need to do as we move from October 7th to the proverbial October 8th. And this is what Yitzhar has said. The first priority is to enhance Israel's security, provide funding to the IDF, Mossad, Shin Bet, invest in technology, and enlarge the army. The second thing, and this is kind of the opposite side of the coin, he said, in terms of the peace process, like how can we even think about peace? Is peace even relevant? He said, while he recognized and acknowledged that is peace even relevant right now, he didn't know, but he also said, we can't let go of our hope and our desire for peace, because peace is part of Zionism. Zionism never assumed that every couple of years in our Holy Land there would be a vicious cycle of bloodshed. We can't give up hope for our children and for our grandchildren. So the second thing, peace process. The first thing, security. And the third thing, democracy. He pointed out and reminded us, and this is sort of like, how can we even remember that this happened? But it did. Starting 10 months before October 7th, there was major unrest in Israel over the nature of the government, with Israelis protesting their duly elected government. And he made the point that during these demonstrations, people didn't hold signs with slogans. People who were demonstrating held the Israeli flag. So he says that pillars 1 and 2, enhancing Israel's security and working on a peace process, needs to be done by Israeli citizens. We can't do that. We don't vote for those things. We don't live there. But pillar 3, democracy, is something that he stated we can all work on. He made the point that Israel is first for Israelis, but all Jews worldwide. Jews are less than 1/3 of 1% of humanity. There's a back and forth about the exact percentage. 0.2% of humanity is Jewish. I'm sorry, 0.2%. 0.2%. Decimal points that get you every time. 0.2% of humanity is Jewish. We have one state, and it belongs to all of us as much as it belongs to Israelis. We need to take responsibility, and we need to vote. Okay. So the World Zionist Congress is made up of 525 delegates. 1/3 are from Israel, 1/3 from the United States of America, and 1/3 everyone else. Okay. We heard about this a little bit before in my talk this morning, but the World Zionist Congress manages the assets of the Jewish community, the Jewish Agency, which provides funding for Camp Ramah, important to many of us, war relief for Jews when Jews are victims of war and tragedy worldwide. There's a budget for the Jewish Agency of $550 million, and half this budget is managed by the World Zionist Congress. Another big bucket of assets that the World Zionist Congress manages is JNF Israel, also known as Kakal, Karen Kayemet L'Israel. And Yitzhar Hess said, I thought this was very humorous, he said, originally Theodore Herzl didn't get his ask from the Rothschild family, so he started a crowdfunding campaign. And that's how Kakal, JNF Israel was born, and 17% of the land in Israel is owned by JNF Israel. This is a large chunk of land. So this budget altogether, between $1 and $2 billion, and 3 times the budget of all Jewish federations in North America. And by casting our vote in the World Zionist Congress elections, we get to, so to speak, elect the board of directors managing this money. Okay. Now, Yitzhar Hess said, and this is, dramatic but also true, the 2020 World Zionist Congress election, he said, was almost a tragedy. That here in North America, we really failed in that election. It did not go well for us. We got 15,000 votes in the conservative movement, 29,000 votes in the reform movement, but the ultra-Orthodox joined and started voting for the first time, bringing in 20,000 votes that changed the makeup of the World Zionist Congress. So the pluralist, and this change in the makeup meant that the pluralistic side of Zionist thinking, meaning the belief that there is more than one way you can practice Judaism in the state of Israel, became the minority. So what does this mean? I'll give a couple of examples. The Jewish Agency, one of the organizations funded by the World Zionist Congress, oversees eligibility for the Aliyah process. Dr. Yitzhar Hess said, I don't look down on the Orthodox's ability to get elected, and I don't look down on their Judaism. But he continued, according to the outlook of the Orthodox parties, Reform and conservative converts to Judaism don't count as Jewish. This is a big difference. Prior to this, Zionism, in the words of Dr. Yitzhar Hess, had been the widest tent possible. Why, he said, would we want to exclude people who have converted and joined the Jewish people, committing to a Jewish way of life? So I think that's the most important thing. But another important thing, according to Israeli law, you can't officiate a wedding, for example. If you are an unauthorized conservative or reform rabbi, you have to be an authorized Orthodox rabbi, recognized by the state of Israel as a rabbi, to perform a wedding in Israel. So the Jewish Agency and Karen Kayemet L'Israel, the JNF Israel, are a major source of funding for the reform movement and the conservative movement. And conservative and reform Judaism, I think most of us already know this, but in case you're hearing this for the first time, conservative and reform Judaism is not recognized in Israel as a way to be Jewish. In Israel, there's no separation of church and state in the same way that there is in this country, and only one stream of Judaism is funded. So the World Zionist Congress is the only source of funding that exists for Reform Judaism and conservative Masorti Judaism in Israel. So the goal, Yisar Hetz states, of the Orthodox parties, not all Orthodox people, but the Orthodox political parties in the World Zionist Congress, is to ensure that there's only one way to be Jewish, which is their way. All right, now, sidebar. Again, I'm not saying that all Orthodox Jews feel this way. I've had many teachers who are Orthodox who have been happy to educate women to become rabbis and cantors. I would say many or most of us have families and friends who are Orthodox, but when there's a context of no separation of church and state, things get a little bit different. The Reform and conservative movements and the Reform and conservative political parties in the World Zionist Congress, we think that being Orthodox is a valid way to be Jewish. But the thing is, the feeling isn't mutual, and that makes things complicated. Okay, so end sidebar, getting back to what Dr. Yitzhar has said. The reality we're facing since 2020 is that we have to get out the vote. This is a democratic process. There's our elections, and we all know that not voting is a vote for the other guy. And so we have until May 4th to vote, and the goal is to engage as many Masorti conservative Jews as possible in North America. Okay. Now, there was a question and answer after Dr. Yitzhar has spoken. I want to speak a little bit about some of what was discussed there. The first question he received as soon as he finished speaking is, wait, what are you saying about the Orthodox? What kind of statement are you making about the Haredi Jews and Orthodox Jews? So as you might guess from the sidebar moments we've already had this morning, I relate to this. I've really made an effort to clarify myself that personally I feel that Orthodox Jews are lovely people and their way of being Jewish is lovely. The second Seder I attended this year was a wonderful, beautiful Orthodox Seder. It was so scholarly and so moving. I think that way of being Jewish, in addition to our way of being Jewish, makes a positive impact on me personally. The challenge is, on the level of political parties, not individuals, this feeling is not mutual. So personally, I feel like Orthodox Judaism is real Judaism, so is Reform, so is conservative. But on the level of political parties, this feeling isn't mutual. Now, Dr. Yitzhar has also was moved to clarify, the Haredi Jews in the World Zionist Congress, they are actually Zionist. You have to sign a declaration when you vote in the World Zionist Congress elections saying that you do believe the state of Israel should exist. Dr. Yitzhar has also clarified that modern Orthodox Jews are Zionists, and he explained, which I was also really moved by. He said his best friends are modern Orthodox, like his closest friends in the world. They happen to be modern Orthodox. And when it comes to politics, he explained, they align with the right-wing and ultra-right-wing parties in the Knesset without hesitation. This is how coalition politics works in both the Knesset and the World Zionist Congress, and this coalition is fighting aggressively against Reform and conservative Judaism being practiced. Now, sidebar. The reason why this moved me so much is that Dr. Yitzhar Hess modeled that it is very much possible, very much real, to care for someone deeply, to love a friend deeply, while voting differently from them and thinking differently from them. This diversity in views does not diminish love, and it does not diminish respect. All right, ending that last sidebar, bringing us to the conclusion that Merkaz, the party of the Merkaz, the party of the conservative movement, and Artza, the party of the Reform movement, are not connected to parties in the Knesset. They're actually the only two parties that are not connected to parties in the Knesset, and they are large enough, even with the substantial ground lost in the last election, to force a vote and make procedures. Now, we, the Merkaz party, stand for Jewish pluralism. Dr. Yitzhar has said, we stand for rebuilding the Israel of October 8th. We stand for a Jewish and democratic state, and he said, Yehudit v'demokratit b'dibur echad, making Jewish education and Jewish summer camp more affordable, and taking care of Jews wherever they are throughout the world, and making sure that they stay affiliated with the Jewish community. So in conclusion, after Yom Tov, get out there and vote. We endorse Merkaz, Slate 17, the slate of the Masorti conservative movement, which supports conservative Jewish institutions, such as Camp Ramah. We support Jewish pluralism, meaning we believe that there is more than one valid way to be Jewish. But even if you don't vote for Slate 17, please vote. Please vote for a slate that you agree with and that you can stand behind. Yitzhar Hetz reminded us that Israel belongs to us as Jews in the world, just as much as it belongs to Israelis. We must stand up and be counted. We must make sure our voices are heard. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.